Yeah, the thing that I love about this team, well, we were down on the field. It was a very long celebration down there. They were down there for about an hour, and I've been to a lot of these games where there's confetti and, hugging and stuff. There was a lot of hugging. There was a lot of confetti, and there was a lot of basking in the moment. But the thing that has stood out to me, Stu, about this team more than anything is, that they really took to heart that they were 10-point underdogs. And if you go back and look at the way that this team has won games the last 3 times they were out on the field, they faced critical third or fourth down moments in those games in which they could have played conservatively, punted, run clock or whatever. And Kalen DeBoer, Washington's second-year head coach, continually puts the ball in Michael Penix Jr.'s hands, Odunze and Jalen McMillan and the players that they have. And, the 19-yard rope that he had against Oregon State on the road to ice that game out, the 4th and 1 from their own 29 last week. And then here they were facing a 3rd and 4 where they would have punted the ball back to Oregon had they not gotten it, and they put it in the air and it was a 6-yard completion. So I wanted to talk to you about the doubting thing. Do you think that this team can win a playoff game? And do you think that they could win beyond that? Or is it just a fun end to the Pac-12 story to you?
No, I thought whoever won this game had a chance to win games in the playoff. And I felt that way since that October 14th game. Washington in particular, though, they just play with the swagger. Mm-hmm. Reminds me of great teams of the past. Penix is kind of a natural leader. And I just think anytime you have, and I would use, that Ohio State team last year and CJ Stroud, nobody thought they were going to hang with Georgia. And they came within a 50-yard field goal of possibly beating them. That's what happens when you have an elite quarterback like that. And, I don't know what Penix's draft stock is. I don't see him mentioned just going, high in the first round, but you watch him throw and it's sometimes it's just a thing of beauty. Incredible. And he has such a great connection with his receivers. And then you called it, like, Dan Lanning likes to go for it on 4th down too. Dan Lanning likes to play aggressive.
Both of these coaches.
But you got to have the right play call. And it just seems like Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb, his OC, seem to always have the right call for the right moment. And so, yeah, we knew they were going to pass on 3rd and 4. They weren't going to play conservative. They were just got to have the play that gets you the yards. And they did. And that seems like that's been the theme in all of their close wins.
Anybody who listens to this show and you're very aware knows that, I'm a Group A and Group B kind of guy. And if you're not aware of that, Group A are the teams that recruit at a level that is unprecedented, before the last 5-7 years. And you have other teams that are very good, but don't have the talent top to bottom. But the one thing that you just mentioned that I think is undoubtedly true is that if you are a team that's going to hang in a playoff game, if you're a team that is going to go toe to toe with a Georgia or Alabama or a team that is built that way, you have to be able to score points. And this team, between Dillon Johnson, the running back, Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback, and Odunze, who we were having a discussion about whether or not he was the best receiver in college football this year, or certainly, goes toe to toe with Marvin Harrison from Ohio State. Jalen Polk, there's a lot of guys on this team and they can score. Yeah. And that's what makes me excited about watching them. It's like there have been Pac-12 teams that score a ton of points in the past, but, they find a way to win and their offense is always on the field when they win. And that to me makes an exciting matchup. And if they play a team like Michigan or Florida State in the first round, like this could be a team that's on the field in Houston on January 8th.
It feels a lot different than in 2016. That Washington team that made the playoff and played Alabama, it was kind of like, good job, guys. Good job getting to the playoff. You knew they weren't going to beat Alabama, and they didn't. They lost 24-7. They didn't have the firepower that this Washington team does. And, I think of the so there have only been 2 Pac-12 teams to make the playoff. It was that one. The first one was Marcus Mariota's Oregon team. Yep. If we were to go look that up, I'm guessing that obviously he was a high pick, but that team didn't produce necessarily a lot of high round draft picks, but they had him and he was, a record setting college quarterback. And they went and played that Florida State team, that Jameis Winston Florida State team. Mm-hmm. I think Jalen Ramsey was on that team, like a bunch of dudes on that team,
right,
and destroyed them. And it was a case of Oregon had it clicking, and Florida State kind of pussed around that whole year. So, when I look at the field, and obviously this will be outdated here very soon, we'll see who wins these games on Saturday. But I don't see anybody that's like, 2018 Clemson or 2020 Alabama that is just going to wipe these guys off.
Kind of have question marks about that. Like we're sitting here in the press box, past midnight, and I don't know who's going to win the Alabama-Georgia game tomorrow.
No, I mean, Georgia's still very good. They've won 29 games in a row. I'm not going to, but I do think they're maybe a little more vulnerable than they were the last couple of years. and they certainly haven't been playing Michael Penix and some of these receivers Washington has every week in the SEC.
I think I just need to give Washington an apology, because I've been saying on this podcast for the past 6 weeks that they're going to lose. They're not good enough. Their defense stinks, and that ever since that USC game when it was whoever had the ball last was going to win. And was wrong. I'm very impressed with this team, and I'm very impressed with Kalen DeBoer. And, it's so funny. You and Bruce Feldman do these rankings every year in the offseason of ranking the top 20 coaches in college football. And, I know there's always some debate about, where coaches started, whether they built programs, what they've won, and all this stuff. And I'm looking back at this Washington program, and I'm thinking 2 years ago, I was scoffing at Jimmy Lake's inability to recruit talent, missing out on 5-star prospects from the Seattle area, or at least in the state of Washington. And then he goes and gets Michael Penix and uses a previous relationship to, bring a quarterback in here that plays the way that he does. And they have these receivers that are really, really good. And he creates a functional defense. And it's when you start looking at program building and, where things are, it's this is how quickly a coach can go from hire that kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit to making that list.
And he wasn't really a big name by any means, right? Football people knew him as he was a great NAIA coach many years ago. But he'd only been the coach at Fresno State for 2 years, and turned out to just be an exceptional hire. He's won 20 games in a row at this point, 9-0 against top 25 teams at Washington. Yeah, just a great coach. I think, this is skipping ahead, but it's going to be really fascinating to see how he fits into the Big Ten next year. But in terms of this year, I don't know if there's another team where you can just pinpoint specific games and say, that was coaching. I mean, the game against Washington State last week, it was insane. They went for it on 4th down at, their own 29?
Yeah.
Tie game, late in the game. If you don't get it, you just lost you've handed Washington State the game-winning field goal, ruined your undefeated season, and they had the perfect play call for it.
I tweeted this during the game. I don't know if I'm a psychopath, but I called them the Mozart of play design. It's just not just the right call, but they're beautiful. Yeah. Even when they run trick plays, like that one play, I think it was in the second quarter down there where they ran the reverse throwback pass. Free pass. Yeah, when other teams run plays like that, it just is the epitome of what coined the term grab pass. And when they run it, it's just everybody's in the right place. Everybody's running it perfectly, and it looks intentional. And there was one broken tackle away from going from a 9-yard gain to a touchdown. So
there's a reason they're paying Ryan Grubb $2 million a year.
Yeah. Well, the $2 million cornerback. Yeah. I mean, that's the $2 million coordinator actually coming out there and doing it. But the thing that I love the most, and I've written columns in the past about Dan Lanning going forward and the way that he went forward on 4th and 5 on the, on his own side of the field in the beginning of the second half and got it. I am just at the point right now where you have to have a coach that believes in your team, in his own team, in his players. And when you have guys like Penix and Odunze, knowing that not only you can trust them in those moments to execute, but also the second part of that is the design piece, having the perfect call at the perfect time that makes those high leverage moments seem less big, because you're going to execute a play the other team doesn't have coming. It's different than going forward on 4th and 1 in a high crucial moment and just running a dive and getting stuffed. When he makes these calls, you have this feeling that it's going to work because he has something in his bag that the other coach isn't ready for. And it happens time and time again. And given a month to prepare, I even made the mistake earlier today thinking to myself, man, if I could match up Kalen DeBoer's ability to do this with a Group A roster, what that would look like. And then I caught myself and thought, that's disrespectful. These guys are every bit as good as those teams that they're going to be playing. And they made a believer out of me. I was
that's how I felt coming off. So that's how I felt coming off the first one, covering that Washington-Oregon game in Seattle. I was sold. I even wrote a column saying I think they could win the national championship. And then they immediately went into a tailspin. They had that weird 15-7 game against Arizona State.
Yeah.
They gave up a ton of yards to Stanford. They USC kind of had to outscore them, basically. They just hadn't yet played at the level they did that game until tonight. And I don't think it's a coincidence that other than Odunze, their other receivers have all been injured at some point. and they're all finally healthy again in time for this game. And it just seemed like their offense clicked. And then the other big thing is Dillon Johnson. This might have been his best game of the season. You know, he ran for a lot of yards on USC, but everybody runs for a lot of yards on USC.
These were like tough, big yards. Yeah.
So, yeah, he had a good game in the first Oregon game, but not like tonight. And so if you get the run game going with him, then that's a pretty tough offense to stop.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, your house, our house, neutral field, getting it done. So I'm very excited to watch this team play, and certainly speaking as we go into the Saturday and Sunday and we try to figure out who's going to make the playoff, it's going to be an interesting dynamic just knowing that they're there.